Welcome to this week's episode of the CEO's Cyber Briefing podcast. Today, I'm thrilled to have Steve Dodsworth with us, a visionary in cybersecurity. From his roots in Silicon Valley to his transformative work in the UK, Steve's insights and strategies are revolutionizing how businesses navigate the digital landscape. Let's dive straight in. So, Steve, fantastic to have you on the show. I've said to you offline before that I think you've got one of the coolest jobs in cybersecurity. But for those people who don't know you, could you just give us a quick high-level overview of you and what you do?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me again. Yeah, I suppose I am quite unusual. I am a business guy from Silicon Valley who's worked in networking, communications, semiconductors, wireless, cybersecurity, fintech for many companies, including very big corporates, starting my world very young, actually, getting a job in Silicon Valley and then, traveling across Europe and the world, doing business in the States, in China and Europe. Running some big teams, doing sales into some big companies, including, doing IP sales into Huawei and things like that. Really, what I'd like to do now is help smaller companies succeed in the UK market. UK market is problematic for smaller companies to get a foothold. So although I've been running my consultancy for 16 years, about 7 years ago, I decided to focus on the UK market solely, stop traveling the world. I saw a problem statement for smaller companies trying to enter the UK industry because really it was challenging to get noticed, particularly if you look at cybersecurity where there's so many vendors out there. It's very, very difficult to make a move. And so I have now a strong relationship with some senior people in the industry. And if I like technologies, if I like new things, if I like things that I think have got a very strong value proposition, I'll introduce them and see if we can do some business. And also, of course, working with CEOs, CTOs, CISOs, CIOs, help them to get the job done. And that's how we make the wheels of industry work, if we help each other out.
And you've just touched on Silicon Valley there. So I know you've helped startups, up to that kind of £100 million plus mark. And now, as you mentioned, you're helping cyber founders scale. So what's the hardest part, in your opinion, of turning that great idea into a trusted enterprise solution?
A great question, because a lot of founders think the technology just sells itself. And for the first few months, it will. They'll find people who will be the early adopters and they'll get off to a strong start and maybe get some seed investment or even get some first tranche of investment from venture capital. It's getting noticed, I think, is really getting in front of the right people, but not in a way which they would naturally think. I believe that they can go to trade shows and stand there at a booth. But unfortunately, what they find is that the people going to the trade shows aren't the people with the spending power, aren't the people that need to get noticed. It's probably got legs in sense of brand recognition and you get out there, but the whole adage still applies that 80% of your money revenue will come from 20% of the customers. And unless you're talking to those people, you won't really get some big moves. You won't really start to see the needle get moved. And that's where I try to come in, is through the relationships. People who trust me know that I'm not just flogging anything. What I'm doing is trying to matchmake. So if you need design partners, you need early adopters, but also if you need to get into the big enterprises, then I can help you. And I've done sales into people like Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, but also smaller companies, smaller people that domestically can actually help you grow revenue.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. And I know you and I have spoken about this before, but the kind of traditional sales model is very ineffective. I wouldn't go as far as to say it doesn't work, but it's very ineffective nowadays. And that partnership ecosystem is so important. You know, you have a good, and I've seen this in practice in my last two companies, and it's something we focused on here with Centra as well. If you have a good partner ecosystem, it gets you off to a very strong start, and it's
Very true,
sustainable as
Dave.
well.
Very true. 1+1=3 is a kind of motto that I have as well. You know, if you can bring in partners, some of the channel partners, you really need to pick carefully who you want to partner with and what do you want that partner to do. You know, at the simplest level, do you want them to transact and shift product for you, or do you want them to go and sell for you? You'd have to be very careful about what you're doing. So I think picking a boutique partners, and I would consider myself as part of that, speedboat kind of an approach. What is it you're trying to achieve in your market? What's the end goal? And following the transcripted sort of SaaS sales model approach, I see people get tripped off by IP people trying to cold call senior people like CISOs who inundated all day, are not reading emails. If you finally get them on a call, they'll tell you, I'm not doing business with you because you just hassled me into this, and you get blocked. So you've got to be careful how you get those warm introductions, I think, to the right people, and be very clear about who you want to deal with. So when I work with a client, I very, very early days, I said, so who are your targets? Who do you want to do business with? Where have you been successful before? What's the model? If they can't answer that, then I think they need to work with me on strategy as well. They need to come in as an advisor and say, right, let's look at your technology closer and see where the value proposition really hits home and get some traction with that. And because again, some companies struggle with that. Oh, we'll sell to everything, everybody will buy it. Well, yeah, and that's sort of scattergun approach. You just dilute your resources. If you can be a focus, right in there, this is where we can win, and then to get some foothold and then get your reference customers, which is very important in the UK market. Who are you doing business with? Who knows who can take a call to say, hey, I've tried this technology, I've POC'd it, I'm deploying it. This is really good stuff. And then people have the confidence to jump on board, because rarely do people want to be the first. That's always the problem. People don't want to be the first.
Yeah, and you mentioned CISOs there, and I know another kind of string to your bow is your Cyber and Beats community as well. So two questions on that. Firstly, what is Cyber and Beats? And secondly, when you have these CISOs behind closed doors, what are they saying to you are their biggest headaches?
Oh, great question. Right. So what is Cyber and Beats? Well, firstly, Cyber and Beats is fun. And there's not a lot of fun in the world sometimes as a CISO. I think that's one thing I've heard. And you just look at all the security breaches and ransomware attacks. And if I'm a CISO, I'm probably not sleeping, to be honest. It's a difficult job. So number one is it's fun. At a simple level, it's a round table, a small group, a round table where we pick some very interesting hot topics in the industry, and we allow the CISOs and a peer group to discuss them. And when I say allow, we don't put any sales pitches in their way. We don't do any hard selling. We ensure that this is very much focused on, right, there's something interesting happening in the world. Why are people being able to make lateral breaches across my network? Because it's going to be very, very difficult to actually lock it down. What can I do to control that? Two, all my employees are using Gen AI, and my company's concerned about the IP leakage. But do I want to stop that innovation? Am I going to be able to stop that innovation? Because the company will suffer. And we know all the analysts and advisors are coming in and say, yeah, you've got to adopt this for various reasons. You've got to adopt AI. Don't be left behind. So these are really hot topics. And what about the AI threats coming? What about deepfakes? What am I? So some of these really interesting topics, we create an environment where people can do that, We invite them. It's not publicly available. We handpick the people who want to come along. And then after that, the beat side of it is we all go down to Ronnie Scott's Jazz Club and watch some music and have some fun together and have a little social together, get to know each other, because people want to operate in communities. They want to have, and you don't just do that by drive-by relationship building. You do that by spending time with one another, so they can actually pick up the phone, or in our case, we have a WhatsApp group where you can actually communicate with each other and talk about issues and help each other out. And that hopefully makes them sleep better at night. So that's part of the intention. We're sponsored by a vendor, but that's very, very, let's say, carefully controlled how much the vendor has input into other than the agenda. And usually I find the sponsor is learning and contributing to the conversation, because if they've developed some key technologies, they want to make it better. They want partners to come on board and help them with the roadmap. So that really is a win-win for both sides, I think, when you get that kind of environment.
Great. And then when you've got these CISOs in a nice, relaxed environment, maybe a couple of whiskeys or scotches, what are they telling you are their kind of biggest headaches doing what they do right now?
Well, they're just the breadth of change in threat vectors is enormous. And when you read about breaches, and they're all headline news now, as you can see, it's kind of disingenuously portrayed. What really happened? How did they get across my network? How did they steal that data? Understanding how to close that door, how to recover, and in fact, in that sense, we have run, as well as Cyber and Beats, we've run workshops, larger workshops. We have, and actually started one off with a COO who had actually been breached. They had blue screens for 12 days, and all their clients were screaming like crazy. There were 18 days before they were fully operational again. And it's interesting to know what that process is, what did go wrong, what can go wrong, and what do you need to consider. But let's not be disguised. It's a moving target because of AI, because the industrialization of the attacks, the sophistication. At the simplest level, we talk about deep fakes, but yes, to generate those multi-channel attacks at a human level, particularly, and at a network level, obviously, it's very complex. And I think the CISOs need to pick their partners very carefully, because they haven't got infinite budgets, and that's where, how do you spend your money as well as possible? I think that's the biggest headache.
Yeah. And I think this next question, I think you offer quite a unique take on this because of where you sit and what you do. But I know from firsthand experience that a lot of CEOs are getting pitched about endless technology, cybersecurity technology that can save their business. How can a leader separate the hype from what is actually there to protect their company?
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is it. And I think maybe I mentioned it. I believe there are 4,000 cybersecurity vendors knocking on the doors of every company pretty much every day now. And new ones are coming up all the time. And if you look at where the VCs are investing, you'll start to see a lot of AI agentic technologies across the board, which on the tin they are promising to automate all those problems. I think one would want to experiment with some of those technologies. I think some of those sort of solutions have a lot of promise, actually. So I'm in the technology game. I actually am a technologist, although I'm doing what I'm doing. I have an engineer by background, and I've run engineering teams as well as doing this job. And the pace of progress with AI is quite strong, and you do want to be looking at some of that. So I, if I was talking to CEOs today, I would be saying, look, you should spend some time researching, spend time to do proof of concepts on some new technologies. By all means, work in consortiums of other companies and associations. Figure out, what you think your particular unique problem statements are, and spend some time on it. And because otherwise you will get left behind. And I think it never so acutely seen as the pace of change in AI. So yeah, that'd be my message really, is spend a reasonable amount on a share of your budgets experimenting and getting reference points. And so give the new companies some opportunities to talk to you.
And do you think from experience, when you're advising a company, and I know it probably differs depending on the industry, but is there a sort of a basic tech stack each company should have?
Well, it depends. Obviously, the size of the company depends. We've got NCSC who have come up with Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus, which is a really good starting point for the UK, I think. But it's not everything. I think there are solutions out there, at a simplest level, the penetration testing, always be looking from the outside at your company and making sure somebody is trying to hack you and to try to penetrate your network. And because you don't know what you don't know if you're not doing that. I think that's the crucial point. Trying to get, I've talked to some of the CISOs I've been talking to, they are now finding that they're almost hacked every week and they're working every weekend, trying to understand that and picking some partners, on the security operations centers, for instance, who really you can trust to do a lot of that work for you, and not just throw issues over the fence and say, well, we found all these things. We have to be able to triage some of these problems in an automated way. Back to my point about AI, is that the pace of hacks, the pace of penetrations is increasing. So you need to automate some of that and intelligently do that.
Yeah. And I think we all know that, trust is such a huge part of winning enterprise customers. So in your opinion, what is the fastest way for a cyber startup to lose trust with a CISO?
Well, many, many, many ways. Many, many ways. What have I seen? I'm in support. I would come people support and communications. If you've explained that you are here with your roadmap and you're going to get to there, if you are open and honest with, what the state of the technology is, say it's a piece of software, what to expect from the bugs. But if you're running a quarterly release schedule and you are patching and you are releasing and you are open with that, and the CISO can see that you're putting effort into the support and maintenance of your product, then you're more likely to be trusted, I think. If it's tossed over the fence and never see it ever again, you get the sale and you run for the hills kind of thing, that's just really, really, really bad behavior. And that includes on the POCs, actually. I think it comes to bear when I work with a few companies, who have very good POC processes. If you're in there helping with the deployment configuration, so on, and with technology, in early days, and you put a process around that, helping to get, it's in your interest to do it because it's your technology. But if you're actually doing that, then it's a good illustration that you're going to be there for the long term. And that's what people want to see.
I know from conversations with CISOs that they see a lot of sort of overpromise, under deliver with a lot of the technology that they're being sold to you. Do you see something similar there as well, where it looks great, it has all the features, all the sort of bells and whistles, but actually the reality is it's a very expensive tool. You're not getting a huge amount of ROI from it?
Yeah. I think the biggest problem I see is, during the sales process of part of that stage, it is good technology. A lot of people have good technology. Does it get deployed? Does that effort go into the configuration? And having the right managed services wrappers or professional services wrappers around it, something that needs to be done. So usually, you have to look at the whole. It's the whole. How do I actually get the most of this technology? So back to your question about partners, that's really comes in, I think, really strong is on the managed services side. Who do you bring in? Can help deploying that technology? So if I'm working with a startup company, those are the kind of linkages I'd be really critical trying to get bonded as we get to that stage of deployment.
An interesting fact about you, Steve, that probably not many people know is that you're also a film producer.
Yeah.
So what lessons from filmmaking actually apply to building trust and scaling a business in cyber?
Well, let me just start. I mean, I'm a film producer, to be simple. I'm not a writer or a director. I'm a producer. And the producer is the person that owns the company, buys the script, hires the talent like the director, and does all that work. So it's actually close to building a startup in a way. On the current film I'm working on, I'm at the process of raising money and applying for UK tax credits and stuff like that. So it's very similar to building our company. But in terms of trust, yeah, when I'm pitching to an investor that the money's going to be well spent, I have to build a degree of trust. How do I do that? Well, I'm similar. Who's going to be in the movie? Who have you got agreed to act in the movie? That's important. Who have I got to agree to actually make the movie? Who's the director? And then what's their track record? Have they made other movies? Have they brought box office success? Are they a safe pair of hands? And so on and so on. And that's, the analogy there a little bit with smaller startup companies, why it's difficult is if they have zero customers, the only people they've got to go on is people like me and the people that I know. And okay, I'm going to take a risk, but I can see that this is all part of people I know and people I trust. So that's really important. I think that warm introduction stage, and it's the same in the movies in many ways. You have to go in warm. You can't go in cold into doing anything in life. The network and power of the network. And back to why, I do events like Cyber and Beats is, I think at that sort of strategic level, it's very difficult to make connections without those personal meetings. And we probably got out of that. Some people got out of the habit of thinking that was going to work with COVID and so on. Everybody thought, well, now we can all go remote. I just don't think that's true. And I think what I found out, the debrief from the last 5 years was, new entrants slowed down. It was very difficult to get a foothold without meeting people. So the incumbents actually benefited, but it was the new entrants that suffered a little bit. And that's again why I like the challenge. I've worked for very, very big companies. I've run very big teams. The challenge of helping those companies get over that step is wonderful. I really enjoy seeing, as I've done several times, work with somebody, do a POC, and all of a sudden they're doing 5 million a year at the London Stock Exchange. Wow. Just to me, that's a win. That's something I enjoy doing, something I'm very proud of. And I think, it's putting all my talents to bear into making things work for other people. And of course, people at the London Stock Exchange are happy too, because they've met some people that they probably wouldn't have met before. So that's everybody wins.
Opportunity for you now to name drop. Who's the biggest actor you've worked with?
Oh, well, I'm about to work with Kelsey Grammer. So he's probably familiar with him from Fraser and Cheers, and he's signed up for my up and coming film. A name you won't have heard of, but I made a film. Maybe you won't have heard of. I made a film with Arian Baccarat, a UK actor, during COVID, and I was very proud to say that this year he won the BAFTA for Best TV Supporting Actor. And I got to know him quite personally and followed his journey over the last few years, and now he's getting major accolades. So that's quite nice when you see that sort of things happen as well.
Great. Last question, back on point with cybersecurity. So if you had to give one piece of advice to a CEO who's choosing between 10 different vendors, all claiming to solve the same problem, what would that advice be?
Come up with a short list, probably 3, and spend those resources I talked about doing a bake-off POC. I think you could distill that down to your top 3 for and you can categorize what is that the best price, is that the best performance, is that whatever. But if you have a good criteria that you're working to, give them all a chance, because they all, in many ways, the more technologies that get deployed and get evaluated, it moves the baseline up. And quite frankly, a lot of startups, the early stage anyway, are developed in a bubble, and they don't get a chance to get full deployment. So, I'm aware in the UK there's a very good seed investing company run by CISOs. I think it's 50 or 60 CISOs who get Dragon's Den style pitches from people that have these side hustles, and give them enough money to give up their day job, give them access to their organizations to do proof of concepts. And, I know of one out of that recently. I was told their valuation is now $100 million. And that's just because they were given that chance and compared with other technologies. It's great to create a race, I think, on these things. Keeps everybody honest.
Yeah, and in your experience, then what makes a good POC?
Oh, you have to define the success criteria.
Yeah,
this is the crucial thing. You have to sit down and say, right, and this is partly the vendor's responsibility as well, but the client and the vendor really needs to write down, what is it you're trying to achieve? What are those toll gates that will make it a success? And the second thing is set a timeline. And if POCs just drift for months, weeks, and so on, they just fake. But if I'm a vendor, if you're going to lend a piece of equipment or software, put a license out there, what's reasonable? A month, 2 months, but expire it, because everybody needs some urgency to get things done, and then both sides then focuses effort on it and gives it the support that it needs.
Great. Well, look, Steve, really appreciate your time and your input on the show.
Okay.
I will add all of your social media handles in the comment section of the show. So if people want to get hold of you, especially if you're a CISO, Cyber and Beats is it a monthly event?
I think actually it's really taking off at the moment. We're doing one in September, we're 2 in October and November as well. So yeah, I think the topics we're running at the moment, say AI, safety, Gen AI in the workplace, if you like, lateral movement of breaches, we've done human risk management, things like that. So very, 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 very happy for you to put the links to the Eventbrite page to your CISO clients, Dave. Be very, very happy.
Yeah, we'll definitely make sure we do that. But like I said, really appreciate your perspective on things. I think you're certainly different to who we've had on the show so far. So I'm sure the people listening will gain some fresh fresh insight and some new ideas. So I appreciate your time, Steve.
Thanks, Dave. Lovely.
Take care.
Bye-bye.